All right, welcome everyone. I am with Kristin Neff today for an interview, and she is an associate professor of educational psychology at the University of Austin, Texas. She's a pioneer in self-compassion research and has co-created the Mindful Self-Compassion training with Christopher Germer, and as the author of the book Self-Compassion and Fierce Self-Compassion. And there's so many more things I could say about you, Kristin, but I feel like you're already so well known, and you almost need no introduction. So I'm really grateful that you agreed to do this interview with me.
Sure, absolutely.
Right, and I think people already know I'm Jamie Lynn, but for those who might not know, Jamie Lynn Tatera, right, founder of Holy Mindful and teacher of self-compassion for children and caregivers. So I've invited you here because I'm hoping that you can shed a little light on fierce self-compassion in particular for parents, for educators, for people who work with children.
Yeah.
And thinking it might be good if we just started off a little bit with self-compassion in general, tender self-compassion, just because we need tender self-compassion in order to have fierce self-compassion. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So basically, self-compassion in general, the way I define it is that it's composed of three core components. The first is actually mindfulness. In other words, we need to be aware and kind of conscious of when we're struggling, instead of it just like, powering through it, or just like not going there, or else being lost in it. We need some objectivity to notice that we're struggling in order to give ourselves kindness, warmth, and support, right? So that's an important part of self-compassion. And also, of course, kindness is in some ways the core of self-compassion, treating ourselves with warmth, support, care, concern. In fact, in science, compassion is usually defined as the motivation to alleviate suffering. So when we have self-compassion, we feel the urge to help ourselves in some way. And then also really important is a sense of common humanity, right? So in the Latin, passion means to suffer, com means with. So there's a sense of connectedness in our suffering, right? We're with ourselves. As we suffer, we're also with everyone else. So instead of self-pity, which is woe is me, poor me, it's just remembering that, hey, the human experience is imperfect. We all fail, we all make mistakes, we all feel inadequate, we all struggle. Some people more than others, but nonetheless, it's nothing abnormal about having a hard time. That's part of being human. And so these three core components, they're really the foundation of self-compassion, but they can take a different form depending on the way we're trying to alleviate our suffering. So lately, I've been talking about fierce and tender self-compassion. So tender self-compassion is really the ability to be with ourselves and to be with our struggles as we are, with acceptance, with warmth, with nurturance. The metaphor for this might be a parent with their crying child. That child may be like screaming its head off, but the parent can love that child, accept that child, kind of hold that child as is, and the child starts to calm down. So in many ways, that's what we do with self-compassion. We embrace ourselves, we embrace our pain, we embrace our imperfection, we accept that this is the way things are, we accept that I hurt. And then we really give ourselves warmth and tenderness and gentleness, and trying to really reassure ourselves, to comfort ourselves. And this is really the healing power of self-compassion, especially when we're feeling difficult emotions. We hold our pain with love, basically is what we're doing. We hold our pain with love and a sense of connection and presence. And then the pain starts to heal and transform. But that's only one side of alleviating our suffering, right? So there's the power of acceptance, but there's also action, right? So for instance, if you're in the second story of a building that's on fire and a fire is broken out below you, it's not like, oh, this is so scary. I've got to be with myself. I mean, that's not compassionate. You may have to do something brave, like jump out the window, risk your life to help yourself. So sometimes we need to do something. We actually need to make change to alleviate our suffering. So it's not that we're unacceptable as we are, but maybe some of our behaviors need some change, or a situation we're in is not good for us, it's not healthy. And the most compassionate thing to do is to do something about it. So this is what I call fierce self-compassion. So if the metaphor for tender is like a mother or a parent, the metaphor for fierce self-compassion is mama bear, right? And we also know that as a parental energy, but if anyone threatens our children, like, we rise up and we can be incredibly ferocious and powerful to say, no, you will not harm my child. Well, we can actually tap into that energy for ourselves as we rise up and we say, no, you're treating me unfairly, you will not harm me, or drawing boundaries. That fierce protective energy is part of self-compassion. Also providing for our needs. I mean, if you think of mama bear, not only does she protect her cubs, she fishes for them or gathers food for them. She works really hard to get food for her kids. And so again, we tend to do that for our children, but the idea is we can also do that for ourselves, to ask ourselves, well, what is it that I need? What is it that's important to me? What do I need to be well? And actually take the concrete steps to give it to ourselves, because we realize that we have value, we're important. And then finally, motivating change. In fact, the number one block to self-compassion is people think it's going to undermine their motivation. They think it's just about tender acceptance, but it's not. Again, it's not self-compassionate to be in a situation or to be engaged in behaviors that are harming you. So sometimes we need like a little kick in the butt to do something different in order to care for ourselves. And it's like yin and yang, both energies, they need to be in balance. One without the other is incomplete. And so you might say self-compassion is the process of asking ourselves, well, what do I need to be healthy and well in this moment? And sometimes we need to go left, sometimes we need to go right. It kind of depends how we're off center. And also it's like a process. It's not like we get to this place of self-compassion or perfection and we're there all the time. It's a process. We fall off, we get out of balance, we get things wrong, and then we give ourselves kindness and support in whatever way we need. And we keep going. That's really, it's a mindset, it's a process.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
That's a big, long explanation.
Yeah, well, there's a lot there, right? And I know in your book too, you say that there's kind of one type of tender compassion, right? And then there's the different varieties that you touched on. There's the fierce, there's protecting, there is motivating, and there's providing, amongst others. Yeah,
there are many others that I haven't even identified. It's really, what do I need to alleviate my suffering, to help myself? And that can be many different things, just depending on your situation and who you are and the timing and all sorts of factors. Yeah, absolutely.
And so as parents and educators who want to help kids to develop self-compassion, I oftentimes will talk about in the sense of like tender self-compassion, that we need to model giving it to ourselves. And in fact, in your book, I remember reading, there was a research study at, I think like the University of Waterloo or something, where they said that social modeling helps people to learn self-compassion. And so for the tender, kind of what I've been guiding parents to learn how to do is to, I think about the 4 S's, of being seen, safe, soothed, and secure. And so we try to do these things for ourselves so that we will be able to give them and do them for our children. And I think there's some elements of fierce in there. Obviously, to be safe, we have to be able to protect. In order to be secure and be seen, we have to be able to provide for ourselves.
Right.
But I oftentimes think of these things as being tender. I almost feel like we should add like a 5th S, which is strong. So
yes, I think we should actually, because sometimes we need soothing. But if you're suffering because, I don't know, your boss is paying you less, you don't want to just soothe yourself for that. You want to speak up and say something about it, to say, no, I need to be paid what I'm worth, or what's fair. And so strength is also really important, and both can be modeled, right? So we want to model standing up for ourselves. We want to model speaking up. We want to model kindness. We want to model care. All of this is really important. And what's really important, also talk about imbalance. Gender role socialization harms everyone, and gender role socialization has barely changed in the last 30 years. It's women have made more progress in society, but still to this day, It's not okay for a little girl to be angry, and it's not okay for a boy to cry and show any sort of vulnerability. These gender roles are pernicious, and they last. And we harm everyone when we perpetuate gender role stereotypes. I mean, every human being to be whole needs both yin and yang, right? Needs to be able to get angry to protect themselves, needs to be able to cry or to be, vulnerable or be soft with themselves when they're hurting in some way. And parents, a lot of times we're unwitting transmitters of these ideas. For instance, when a mother sees a young boy who's upset, they think, oh, is he angry? They see that same girl who's upset the same way, oh, she's sad. Like, we interpret things that boys are fierce and girls are tender. And that harms everyone because everyone needs both. So it's another really important thing parents can do is think, am I viewing this through the lens of gender role socialization? Am I actually inhibiting this child by saying only one type of behavior is appropriate for that child? And really thinking about that, because again, it harms everyone. So it's also, about gender equality as well. It's really as an important piece of self-compassion.
Absolutely. And it makes me think back to my college years and reading the book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and this idea that we can internalize these things. And so I think for myself as a parent, I'm really becoming aware, and this goes into parenting in general. There's this kind of social norm that I should, kind of sacrifice myself. And of course, there is sacrifice implicit in parenting. Yes. But this idea that I should count less so that my kids count more. And yes. if I don't counter that within my own, it's kind of like I'm internal, just like white privilege, yes. right? These things that yes. we've internalized. And then if I can't work on that within myself, I will unwittingly pass it on to my children.
Right, exactly. And it's not equal, right? So fathers aren't expected to self-sacrifice the same way women are. We saw this with the pandemic. It was women who stayed home and watched the kids. It was women who bore the brunt of having to do the extra childcare once our social institutions were, not available. And so we really have to be aware of all these things. And again, how much can we do? Well, we don't always have complete power over the situation, but at the very least, you have to be able to name it and say, hey, this isn't right, and so it's not like we shouldn't sacrifice with our children. I mean, I have an autistic son. I know a lot about sacrifice, but I also really give a lot of importance to my career. It's not either or. And here's the really important thing, that we don't value ourselves based on meeting other people's needs. See, women are taught that to be worthy, we have to be self-sacrificing, and we have to be nice, and we need to say yes to everyone. Actually, sometimes we need to say no to people, including our children, right? So, I mean, it's a matter of balance. It's a matter of balance. It's not always just saying yes unwittingly. It's saying, here's my child's need, here's my need, maybe here's my partner's need, here's the need of my work, and coming up with a compromise solution that meets everyone's needs. And what my research shows is that self-compassionate people are more able to come up with compromise solutions that meet everyone's needs, as opposed to, it's not like my way or the highway, but it's not, okay, I'm just gonna subordinate my needs either. It's really that middle ground that we try to get to.
Right. And that can be I feel like that can be so challenging, like even just personally trying to get to that middle ground. And something that it makes me think about too is, I know in your book you talked about like in self-compassion training, you talk about backdraft, right? Like yes. when we have backdraft, and you also talk about backlash.
Yes. Yeah.
Society can give us stuff back. And so yes. I think when I try to say, wait a second, I should count two, there's a little voice that says, no, you shouldn't. Like that's you're selfish. It should be only your children, and then a fear of backlash from people thinking negative things about me.
Yeah, and so backlash is a real phenomena, and we can't, just because it shouldn't be there doesn't mean it isn't there. So we need to account for it. So backlash is basically what society does to people who don't conform to gender role socialization. So men face backlash, again, if they're too tender or they're too sensitive, right? Women face backlash if they're too assertive, if they're too competent, if they're too successful, right? Or if they say no to people, because again, gender role socialization means, oh, I'm helpful, I say yes to everyone. So what the research shows is actually one way to counter backlash is if you combine fierceness with tenderness. So maybe you stand up for yourself and you draw a boundary, but you also say something that's nurturing or kind or kind of prototypically feminine. If you're a woman, then that helps temper the backlash. So that's one thing you can do, but you need to be aware of it. You have to do that consciously to show both. But in many ways, self-compassion is a radical act, because you're saying, of course we want to, we want to be well in society. We want to do well. We want people to like us, all those things. But you're saying my self-worth isn't contingent on you liking me. I want to get along. Of course I do. And it's part of being well. And we want everyone to be well. But once my self-esteem or my sense of worth isn't contingent on you liking me, then I have real freedom. And some people may not like you as much, right? And you're the one who decides, okay, how do I want to negotiate that? But, maybe you decide, okay, I'm going to say yes, even though I really don't want to, because this person's approval is important to me. It's a totally valid choice, but you should make that choice consciously, as opposed to just, oh, of course, because, I want people to like me. So once you start liking yourself, that gives you the freedom to make more informed and more empowered choices.
Absolutely.
And by the way, no one from the outside can tell you what's the right choice for you. I can't tell you. You're the only one who can say what's the right choice for you. And you should be able to make that choice for yourself.
Absolutely. And then I think when we have, if I try to think again from my own life here, if I try to let myself count too, or have a vision of myself other than what is in the box. I had a mom who was wonderful, but she sacrificed herself to take care of us kids, right? That was the modeling, the social modeling. And I think there's I kind of internalized, this is what a good mom does.
Yes.
And so when I try to do anything different, I get what we, in self-compassion, we call backdraft. Am I a bad person? So it's coming from the inside out. And so is it just tender self-compassion we would use to deal with backdraft, or do we need some fierce, or how do we deal with that?
Well, we always need both, right? So we need to accept that it's painful. Feelings of inadequacy, feelings of shame, they hurt. And so being there for ourselves, kind of, again, soothing ourselves, comforting ourselves for the pain of it. Accepting ourselves as we are. Yes, we aren't superhuman. No, we can't give everything, to our children and meet our needs and all that. So we need to have tender compassion for the pain of that. But at the same time, we have to be aware that we don't want to just buy into this value system that the patriarchy has placed on us. Actually, my needs do count. And here's the thing. If you meet some of your needs as a parent, you're going to have more resources to be able to give to your children. Instead of modeling for your children, especially if you have girls, that yes, my worth only comes from sacrificing everything for my children, saying, actually my career is important, or there's some things that are important for me to fulfill. You're actually modeling that for your kids as well. So it's, and again, I'm not saying these issues are easy to resolve. They aren't. They're really difficult. I struggle with them. We all struggle with them. But we need to give ourselves permission to value our own needs and to take steps to meet them. Otherwise, we're just modeling subservience for our kids. Do you really want your kids to think that that's what being a parent is about?
And I really, really appreciate you saying that, Kristin, because I think as parents or educators, anybody working with kids, oftentimes, again, we do value so much what we're helping our kids to grow into. Yes. And so if we can have that at the forefront of my mind, do I want my kids to be subservient? Do I want my kids to think that they matter less than others? And then to be just so conscious of, what am I modeling? Am I modeling that I count too? Because that's what I want my kids to know, that they count too.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
So another question I have is just about being able to integrate or kind of combine fierce and tender. I notice, again, another one of my tendencies is that when I get fierce, like I tend to like tighten up my tummy and like, now it's fierce time. And I sometimes honestly really struggle with being simultaneously, what you call caring force, right? Like here I am strong in the world, and you count two, like all the different, those different balanced and kind, but also strong. And I just, do you have any tips for those of us who are struggling?
Well, I get it wrong all the time as well. Like I say, it's like, it's not like you get there and it's done. So I have developed some practices. For instance, I find that I'm integrating the energies in my body as opposed to thinking. Like, so I have a practice called breathing yin and yang, where you kind of do it through the breath. You try to invite in these two energies to merge and integrate. It seems to help almost to do it at the physical level. It is challenging, and I get it wrong all the time as well. I'm sure there are many people who are probably better at it than I am. But I know that it's worth doing, and it's worth practicing, and it's worth setting our intentional effort to try to integrate them. Because if you're too forceful or too fierce without tenderness, you might become harsh or aggressive or harm people, right? We don't want that. Then that's not working in the service of compassion. On the other hand, if we're too tender without enough fierceness, we might be complacent or subservient, or we may not meet our own needs, and we don't want that either. So it's really just to constantly, you just get out of balance. You try it. Okay, what is it that I need? I need a little bit of this. I need a little bit of that. And, it may be like a zigzag like that as opposed to like a straight line. But it's really worth the effort. And again, like I say, I have developed practices that are available on my website and also in my book, Fierce Self-Compassion, that you can practice.
Right. And so then the website is the fierceselfcompassion.org. Is that
yes, that's right. And it's actually, it's a page on my, or you can just type self-compassion, and I've got a Fierce Self-Compassion page on my general self-compassion site. I have a lot of free practices and guided meditations and other things there. So.
Beautiful. Well, and in just a moment, I'm actually going to ask if you don't mind to guide us in a practice, but
sure.
I'm curious first, if you could just tips for parents, like if we want, other than modeling, and again, you would just have your own experience and you're not an expert in this per se, but for those of us who want to help, well, I guess I'm like, this is such a big question, right? Because I know I need to model fierce and tender. I need to model this. And then in my interactions with my kids, I want to arrive as a balance between fierce and tender.
Yes.
And then I'm supposing that's probably the best way I can help my kids to internalize fierce and tender, is to model and interact with them that way. I'm wondering if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, well, there's a whole parenting literature on parenting styles, and there's something called authoritative parenting, which combines warmth with boundaries. So an indulgent parent, right, or I think it's called a permissive parent, is very warm and loving, but doesn't draw clear boundaries or have high expectations. There's also authoritarian parents, which have very high expectations and clear boundaries, but not a lot of warmth. And we know for sure that the best parenting style is authoritative, which combines the warmth with the boundaries. That really maps on nicely to fierce and tender self-compassion. So in a way, I'm not coming up with this. This is over and over again in the literature, just like androgyny. People who display agentic and communal qualities both are better off. So this isn't anything new. It's just a slightly different way of talking about it. But we know we need both. We need warmth, but we also need firmness, clear boundaries, clear expectations of ourselves and others, right? So if that term resonates better with people, what it means to be an authoritative parent, that means having boundaries, having clear expectations, communicating, this is okay, this isn't okay, this is my boundary, this is what I need. I need you not to interrupt me when I'm on the phone, or whatever it is to children. When you're modeling that, but also with warmth, then you are really modeling this caring force. So it's actually not such a foreign idea. Maybe we just aren't used to talking about it in this particular way.
Absolutely. And a lot of us probably, again, struggle with integrating those two energies. So
yeah. And it's something, so you can even feel it in your body, right? So if you stand up straight and then put your hand over your heart. So let's say you've got to draw a boundary with your child, curfew, or, you can't use the phone while you're, eating dinner at the table or something like that, right? There's a way in which we approach it by getting in touch with our tenderness, our love, our warmth. We care about our children, of course. And then also knowing that we need to draw boundaries clearly, not only for ourselves, but also for our children, right? They're going to need to know that in life there are rules, there are boundaries, there are clear expectations. That actually helps them to grow. If you just say, do anything you want, that's actually not going to help them to grow. So that's one way we can try to embody it, is just getting in touch with these two energies. So it may be, so like, for instance, something like putting a fist on your heart with the other hand over it gently, right? This kind of a strength with love gesture. You can think of that, even strength with love, right? As a way to invoke it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe I need to do that next time I try to get my kids to wash dishes. Just walk around like, okay, honeys, it's time to wash dishes now.
That's right. Yeah.
And when I get a little pushback, just feel my strength and love, and here I keep going. And
That's right.
I really do appreciate the idea of embodiment, because
Yeah.
if I sometimes trying to get it right in my behavior, like when I talk about, I like a lot the work of Daniel Siegel, and he talks about the banks of rigidity and chaos. You know, when
Yeah.
you were talking about fierce and tender, it made me think about those two banks, and how when we try to get it right, sometimes we actually become rigid.
Yeah.
And because we're trying so hard, and now we're not showing up in any authentic way, because
Yeah.
I'm trying so hard to get it right. And so if I can try to embody what fierce and tender feels like, I might actually show up in a more authentic way than if I'm trying to
Right.
like get the behaviors right.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah. Authenticity is so key. It's actually one of the main benefits of self-compassion, what the research shows, is authenticity. So it's a good thing.
A very good thing. Great. So are you open then? I'm wondering, do you want to,
Yeah.
I know you talked before about a self-compassion break. Do you want to guide us in a self-compassion break?
Yeah. So, and again, some of the people seeing this may have done the self-compassion break, but I'm going to lead it with some more options into how these components can express themselves. So the self-compassion break is basically bringing in intentionally mindfulness, a common humanity, and kindness, right? And then adding physical touch, but they really can take different forms. So in their tender form, what these three components feel like is loving, connected presence, right? So if you need some tenderness, the way what you give yourself when you bring in these three components may be loving, connected presence. But like in protective form, they feel very different. It's actually brave, empowered clarity, right? So the kindness gives you bravery to stand up for yourself. The sense of common humanity helps you feel empowered. I'm not alone. And the mindfulness gives you clarity, like this is what I need, this is okay, this isn't okay. Providing for your needs shows up as a fulfilling, balanced authenticity. Again, very different again. The kindness, it means you actually fulfill yourself. That when you're kind to yourself, it means you're going to count your needs and value your needs so that you fulfill them. Common humanity means it's balanced. Again, it's not my way or the highway, but it's not subordinates. It's like, okay, how can I balance everyone's needs? And again, the mindfulness gives us the authenticity. What's really true for me? What I need is not the same thing as what you need. So, and then the third one, actually, motivation is encouraging wise vision. So kindness encourages us to reach our goals. The wisdom, the common humanity actually helps us see what can we learn from our human failures, and mindfulness gives us vision. So these are four really radically different expressions of the same three core components, which is kindness, common humanity, mindfulness. So I'm going to lead a self-compassion break where I'm going to actually, when we bring in each of these components, I'll help people think about what it is they need. Right? So it's kind of maybe a little different than what people are used to.
Wonderful.
Okay. So I'm going to close my eyes. It's very hard for me to lead this with my eyes open. So anyone who's watching this, I'd invite you to close your eyes, and you're closing your eyes. Okay. So I would invite you to think of some situation in your life, real situation that's happening currently that you're struggling with. Okay. So this could be, maybe you're feeling badly about something, feeling inadequate, feeling some shame, a little bit of shame, or maybe you're feeling sad or frightened. Or maybe your struggle is coming from something different. Maybe you're feeling like you need to draw some boundaries with someone or to speak up, stand up for yourself. Or maybe you're really struggling with, there's something that you really want to accomplish or to do for yourself, and you just don't seem to be able to find the energy to do it. So really just let whatever comes up, come up. So something you're struggling with, and just choose one. There's probably many things that are coming up for you. So just choose one situation. All right, so play it out in your mind, what's happening. And then we're going to bring in the 3 components of self-compassion in a way that hopefully we can give ourselves what we actually need for this particular situation. So first we want to bring in mindfulness, right? So this may look like validating your struggle. Right? It may be something like this hurts. Or it may look different depending on your situation. Maybe it's this is unfair, or this needs to change. Right? So mindfulness actually just allows us to see clearly what's happening. We're present with it. We see it. We acknowledge it. And then we want to bring in common humanity, which really lets us know, see the bigger picture, right? So first of all, knowing that this is part of life, situations like this are part of life. We aren't alone. We aren't alone. And that sense of being not alone may make us feel more connected to others. Or maybe also more empowered, right? So for instance, if you're wanting to speak up for yourself, remembering that you aren't alone, that other people are in similar situations can actually give you strength and power. And then we want to support ourselves with some physical touch. So give yourself the type of touch that feels like what you need right now. Maybe it's a gentle hand over your heart, right? Especially if you need more tenderness. Or maybe it's like a fist over your heart, like a strength gesture. Right? So give yourself the type of touch that feels right for you right now. Let's now bring in some words of kindness, of care, support. And which again, so some words that are exactly what you need to hear for this situation. They may be words of acceptance, right? It's okay to be imperfect. I care about you just as you are. Or maybe they're words of encouragement. You can do it. I believe in you. Or words of empowerment, right? I got your back. You need to draw this boundary. You need to speak up to care for yourself. Really, what is it that you need to hear? And sometimes if you don't know what you need to hear, you might just imagine that you had a friend, a close friend who is experiencing the exact same thing you're going through, right? The same situation. Right, and what might you say to your friend to help give them what they need? And then you can try it on with yourself. And it may feel awkward. You may say, I don't believe the voice. That's okay. It's not like positive thinking. We're just really orienting ourselves toward being kinder, more supportive toward ourselves. And sometimes it takes a while, and that's okay. It really is a practice. So just allow yourself to be however you are in this moment. Okay, and then you can open your eyes. So that may have been a little too open. I've got 4 different types of self-compassion breaks. So, but nonetheless, hopefully you got a little taste of what it might look like. Yeah.
Well, that was certainly wonderful for me. I was able to choose something that, it's interesting because normally the situation I chose, normally I would give myself tender compassion and then I'd try to be fierce, but with this idea that it's all on me. But with our conversation we just had, I was like, wait a second, this shouldn't be all on me. Like this particular thing should be something that I'm working on with a team. And I was able to really integrate the yin and yang. And so I think oftentimes it's less about the words and more about, like you're saying, like a kind of a wise, more holistic vision of the whole.
Yes, exactly.
Beautiful. Well, thank you. I really appreciate your time and helping me, but also helping other parents and educators to get a little clearer on what does it look like to balance fierce and tender, to embody fierce and tender, and to help our children to develop both fierce and tender self-compassion.
Good. Wonderful.
So, thank you. Right. And I don't know, do you want to share any more resources with the...
Well, I think just if people are interested, the best place, if you just Google self-compassion, you'll find my website, and got linked to books, and I've got guided practices. And then for my website, you can also link to the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion, which is really the training arm of what I do. It's a nonprofit I founded with my colleague, Chris Germer. So if anyone wants to take any online training, that'd be probably the best place to go. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kristin.
Welcome.
The world keeps turning, things change. We have new obstacles that are thrown in our way. You can't hold us down. Together we'll get around. You just have to look inside, and you will find that we are in it together. I know within my heart you are not alone. You are not, and we are in it together. I've known it from the start. You are not alone. You are not alone. You might feel lonely and down. You might be thinking things will always be this way. But you got a friend in you. Self-compassion will get you through. You just have to look inside, and you will find that we are in it together. I know it in my heart. You are not alone. You are not, and we are in it together. I've known it from the start. You are not alone. You are not alone. We've got Bunny. You're not alone. Doodles, what can you do? Spots, we can be aware. And Snuggles, I care about you. When life gets hard, we're resilient. We'll get through it. We're resilient. We'll get through it. We're resilient. We'll get through. And we are in it together. I know it in my heart. You are not alone. You are not alone. You're in it together. I've known it from the start. You are not alone. There is love inside of you.